Someone once told me that rocks and stones are the historians of the world. They sit and watch everything. They see sisters fight, thieves in the night. They see lovers kiss and teenagers steal glances. They see all the stories that happen behind closed doors that we don't care as humans to pay attention to see. The problem, though, with having rocks and stones as our historians is that they have no voice with which to share these stories. They can't, like the people of old, gather children around a fire and tell the great heroisms that their grandfathers' did. No, they sit there. The stories get lost for all eternity because the only things that know them are things without a voice. That's where the inspiration from my portfolio of voices came from, because I want to give, as the title implies, a voice to these untold stories. To me, there is a story in everything. There's a tale in these empty stairs here. There's a tale in my necklace. Where did this key come from? Or there's a tale in all these different places, and what I want to do is give a voice to them. Voices started in my junior year English class with Miss Sastre. My class was overfilled with people. We had people sitting on the floor, on desks, in the computer chairs in the back of the class. So we really didn't get much done, as you can imagine. Sastre, though, to make up for this, allowed us to come talk to her after school about whatever we were working on. I would meet with her often, and she kind of took me under her wing due to my interest in writing. She gave me different prompts and challenges to do, and one of such of these was to set aside a few minutes each day for writing. It could be anything: writing fiction, writing a little essay about this or that, or poems. I chose to go the poetry route with my poetry blog, Chickadee Thoughts. So I would write a little bit each day in her class, write a little poem about how I was feeling or how the flowers looked outside, typical poetry. But as I continued with this blog, I started realizing all the things that I could write about. I had a discussion with my Uncle Harry over the summer, and he was telling me how everybody has a story. And I realized that this concept of everyone and everything having a story could be applied to my blog. And so I started writing poems from the perspectives that I had never really thought of before. From the perspectives of my feet, or from my hands, from inanimate objects. I gave all of these things a voice, and I started using my poems to tell stories. I told the tales of what people did or what they dreamed of doing. I described their wishes, their desires, their pasts and their futures. As I continued with this, my poetry slowly grew better and better. In my senior year, I entered into my school's newspaper, The Forest Fire. The advisor, Jeff Belcher, helped me to improve my essay and my nonfiction and my fiction abilities, because he was as well my AP English 4 teacher. He had me write more nonfiction pieces, such as One Art, Two Styles, which was the telling of the story of how two rappers kind of overcame all their difficulties and became really renowned in the community and in the United States as a whole. These two rappers, Kenny Willis and Colin Tate, allowed me to tell a story that I'd never really told before on a different platform. It was a nonfiction piece completely, an article that was published later in the paper that required me to interview them and to tell their personal stories and why they wrote. And it really allowed me to connect with why I write as well. Now, at the same time, I started working on pieces such as God of Happiness, which was inspired when a friend of mine asked me to write about smoking, because she used it as a way to forget. She told me all about how smoking feels, how it burned her tongue and filled her lungs. And I took all of the information she gave me and turned it into a short fiction piece. And I learned how to tell stories in a fantasy and sci-fi more way than just blatant saying somebody did this and then they were happy, somebody did this and then they were sad. I learned how to use diction and alliteration and all that to my advantage to better tell the stories. Projects that are going to be submitted to the Davidison Fellowship Scholarship. My project can't cure cancer. It can't save the world. It's not going to change modern medicine or change our engineering. It can't do all of that. But what it can do is it can record the world. It can record our history. It is a history book that's more personalized. It is a collection of all the memories that I have, that other people have. This is the beginning of something even more. As I go throughout my life, Voices is going to grow. It's going to turn into something so much more than the 66 pages it is now. The point of Voices is to tell stories, and that's what it's going to do. What I want to do with Voices is to share everything that I have seen, to share the morals that I've learned and that others have learned, share people's mistakes so that we don't make them again. It applies to how literature is nowadays because it brings us back to what literature is really all about. Literature started with native tribes sitting around a fire telling their children of their forefathers, legends and adventures and heroic acts. Nowadays, we hardly look at literature. We read the occasional thing online, this article, that article, maybe listening to an audiobook if we're lucky. But most people don't even give a book 5 seconds of attention. We get bored with it. So what I hope to do with Voices is to change that, to get people interested in learning stories, because these are their own stories being told. I think it gets us back to what literature is all about. It's about these stories and getting people to think a little bit more and remember a little bit more. And that's what I hope to do with Voices.